Good morning, everyone. It's Sunday, April 20th, Easter Sunday. Massachusetts Congressman Jim McGovern is our guest this morning. Let's go on the record. The ranking member of the Rules Committee dealing with a Republican majority that is breaking all the rules. Can the Democrats find the right game and the right game plan to push back? The Congressman is in the chair. It's time to go on the record.
From WCVB Channel 5, the inside word from Washington to Beacon Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Welcome to OTR, everyone. I'm Ed Harding.
I'm Charmin Sacchetti, and with us at the table is Massachusetts Congressman Jim McGovern, a member of the House since 1997. He represents the state's 2nd congressional district, which includes Worcester, much of central Massachusetts, and parts of western Mass. It is so great to have you here, and happy Easter.
Well, you too. I'm happy to be here.
Great to see you, Congressman, as always. So let's jump right into the fire. We have been hearing the words constitutional crisis frequently. Are we at a point of a constitutional crisis?
Well, I believe we're at a constitutional crisis. I'm not sure that we have a full consensus of that yet, but we're getting there. I mean, this president is ignoring the Constitution, is denying people due process, doesn't seem to believe that Congress matters. I mean, he's behaving more like a king than like a president. So people should be worried.
And what should happen at this point in time to put the train back on the tracks, if you will?
Well, it'd be helpful if some of the Republicans would stand up and urge him to follow the Constitution and respect the Constitution. I'm not even sure Trump can spell Constitution, but the bottom line is that he's behaving in a way that is eroding the checks and balances in this country and moving in a direction that I think smacks of authoritarianism.
So let's just talk numbers, and I'm not sure where in the scheme of things, numbers are really all that relevant, but the president's approval numbers have not cratered. Does that say anything? And if it does, what does it say?
No, I think they're going down. I saw some polls.
Yeah, but they haven't bottomed.
They haven't. No, but because I think people are still in disbelief that we would have somebody in the presidency who would disregard the Constitution, who would believe that he's above the law, that he could do whatever the hell he wants.
Do you think they're still willing to give him the benefit of the doubt?
I'm not sure they're willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think they're hoping that he's not going to be as bad as some people are saying he's going to be. I think he's already proven that he's worse than I thought he was going to be. Again, I've been through a lot. I've lived a long time. And in all my life, I have never been more concerned about the future of this country as I am right at this moment.
All right. The Trump administration's immigration crackdown, it's led to some pretty stunning moments, incidents here on the streets of Massachusetts. I want you to take a look at this video. All right, this happened in New Bedford. A man from Guatemala taken into custody by federal agents. He had no criminal record. And in Somerville, a Tufts graduate student from Turkey grabbed off the sidewalk, now being held in Louisiana. How have you responded as a member of Congress to these types of incidents?
I'm horrified by this. I mean, this is the stuff you would expect to see in Russia or China or North Korea. We're not a police state. We're the United States of America. People are entitled to due process. I mean, there's a report today that ICE picked up a U.S. citizen who had a birth certificate to prove that he was a U.S. citizen. People are frightened. And what's happening on college campuses where students who are here illegally having their visas revoked without any explanation, I mean, it is chilling. Again, I think this is a moment when we all have to push back, not just politicians, but average citizens. This is a time to speak out. This is a time for courage, not acquiescence.
There is a lot of different opinions on immigration. Do Democrats have the right messaging right now on immigration?
Look, follow the laws.
Are they with the American people?
Yeah, I do believe most Americans are horrified by what happened to Mr. Garcia, who was wrongfully deported to a concentration camp in El Salvador, a prison known for torture, a country run by a dictator. He calls himself the coolest dictator in the world. I know a little bit about El Salvador. I've spent a lot of time there monitoring human rights, and that prison is notorious. People are being picked up in El Salvador and put in that prison without charge, and oftentimes they're disappearing. The fact that we in the United States are using taxpayer dollars to send people back to those conditions is unconscionable. And Trump even said on a live mic that U.S. citizens might be deported in the future.
Do you think the Democrats do need to change their messaging on immigration, though? I understand the incidents that we're talking about here, but do they need to move a little bit more to the center on this issue?
I don't even know what that means. I mean, what I do know is that we should follow the laws. If you break the laws, if you commit a violent crime, absolutely you should be put in prison or you should be deported. There's no question about that. Right? Follow the laws. And we need to fix and update our legal immigration laws so that people don't have to wait 100 years to get here and that families can be reunified and businesses can have access to the best talent to be able to help their businesses grow and to help our economy grow.
So the next thing I'd like to talk about is Harvard. Harvard is not backing down in the face of billions of dollars in funding cuts and the threatened loss of a tax-exempt status. NIH, National Institute of Research funding, is also being cut by the Trump administration. The president says that he's cutting government waste. That's how he's framing it. What are your? I know Harvard is not in your district, but what are your constituents saying about?
Well, look, I mean, I applaud Harvard for standing up to the bullying tactics of this administration. To give in is to basically say that there no longer will be academic freedom in this country. That Donald Trump and his administration will dictate what you can teach, who can teach, what students can go there. I mean, come on. And by the way, all colleges and universities ought to stand with Harvard. We need a united front. That's the only way you're going to stop this unjust and unjustified encroachment on academic freedom. Republicans used to think freedom was a good thing. I don't know what the hell's happened over the last few years, but all of a sudden they're willing to take away freedom.
Well, I was just going to say, you know that Harvard and I'm going to back it with a $53 billion endowment, but nonetheless, Harvard is a big elephant in the room. How do the little elephants, the smaller schools, stay in there? Band together, stand up to this.
UMass is
right. Yeah, it is, and that's my message to every college and university in my district and all throughout this country. And by the way, when the Trump administration cuts NIH monies or NSF monies to research into finding cures to diseases and to be able to help end suffering in this country, that's not only a good thing to do for the people of this country, it's a good thing to do because you save costs, you save money. I mean, if we found a cure to diabetes or to Alzheimer's disease, think of not only all the human suffering we would prevent, but all the money we would save. And so this doesn't make any sense. I mean, we are basically cutting monies to universities and colleges that have been in the forefront of medical breakthroughs, of scientific breakthroughs. They have helped grow our economy. These colleges and universities are not islands unto themselves. They contribute greatly to our communities and to our country as a whole.
I want to ask you what you're hearing about likely at some of these town halls that you're holding. What about Congress as a check and balance? The White House complaints that they seem to be operating unilaterally. Earlier this month, Senator Cory Booker made a record-breaking speech decrying President Trump's policies, but little has been done with actual legislation to really effect change here. Why is that?
Well, first of all, elections have consequences. And if you are in control of the House of Representatives, for example, you get to control what comes to the floor. So a lot of good ideas and a lot of good legislation that some of us would like to bring to the floor is being blocked by the Republican leadership. So we can't change that really until we get to the midterms. But in the meantime, I really do believe all these demonstrations and these protests and people expressing their concerns is beginning to make a difference. I saw a report yesterday that there's a handful of House Republicans that are now saying that they might not vote for a budget reconciliation bill that guts Medicaid. I even heard
because they're hearing.
Yeah, they're hearing because they're seeing.
Do you support a change in any Democratic leadership right now? Do you think there needs to be change?
I think I have great confidence in Hakeem Jeffries. But I think this is a moment where we all have to be leaders. And by the way, not just members of Congress, not just politicians, but everybody. We have to be leaders in our communities. Because some of the challenges we're going to face right now are not just in Washington, but they're in our local communities. I've got some towns that have school board members who make Donald Trump look like Ted Kennedy. I mean, so and they have an impact on on their local schools and on their local libraries. So we need to make sure we're paying attention to everything. This is a time for engagement and for people to pay attention like never before.
We are with Congressman Jim McGovern, and our conversation continues right after this.